Hello everyone, this is part 39 of What If Naruto Meets the Nine Tails Early, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. So what do you say, Hiashi, do we have an agreement? Asked Oro. Hiashi turned his head away. Normally, he would have immediately backed down the offer, but why wasn't he now? His attention then turned to the field and to his daughter. Why? He actually wanted to accept the wager, but why? After trying so hard to keep Hinata away from being sealed, why did he want to risk it now? So, what do you say? You'd better speak now before the match starts, provoked Harabi. Still hesitant, he continued to look down as his daughter and the other 9 compeers basked in the welcomes and cheers of the audience, something they had been deprived of in Kumo. Was he really thinking of putting his own daughter's future on the line? It was then that Hinata looked up, directly towards him. Now he knew why. For the very first time, he could saw without even the slightest doubt, that he truly believed in her. Long gone was the shy, timid girl that he had seen as a disappointment. What now stood there was a young woman who had complete confidence in her abilities and one he had prayed so hard to finally see blossom. Hiashi could see the way the elders were drooling over this opportunity. For one reason or another, they held a deep hatred for Hinata. Then again, they never liked her mother either. When the two of them had first started their relationship, the elders had been so adamant about the two ending it, and as a result, they married one another. The first 4 years of their marriage had been difficult, with the clan and the elders always upon them, but they enjoyed their time spent together and loved one another with no limits. And then Hinata was born. She looked just like her mother and honestly, Hiashi couldn't have been happier. When he began training her, yes, he was strict, but he was also fair and loving with Hinata outside of the dojo. All 3 of them were never without a smile on his face. Even after his brother's he was truly grateful that his brother had allowed him to spend more time with his family. 2 years later, Hanabi was born, but at a terrible price. His wife had suffered from complications from giving birth and passed away shortly after. Ever since then, his once warm heart began to grow cold towards Hinata as she reminded him too much of the woman who was taken away from him, and turned his attention to Hanabi, the last gift she ever gave him. For the next 6 years, Hinata's confidence suffered tremendously and he began seeing her as a weak failure. In all honesty, he was maybe a week at most away from having her sealed and banished from the clan until he heard that she had made the final round of the Chunin exams. Following that, bit by bit, the shell that Hinata had encased herself in was slowly peeled away, and the result was directly in front of him. The funny thing though, is that this was all due to a certain blonde-haired boy, who bore a striking resemblance to his late teammate. His thoughts were taken back to when his wife first told him that she was pregnant. He remembered back to one night in particular when he had told Minato and the two of them spent an evening on top of Minato's own head, celebrating and cracking jokes. If there was one that he now remembered the best, it was the two of them joking about the possibility of their kids ending up together, assuming one was a boy and the other was a girl. Knowing Minato, he was probably cracking up right about now, wherever he was. Hiashi's mind was brought back to the current situation. This was yet another of the many attempts by the elders to separate his family and honestly, he was getting tired of such disgraceful acts. Fine, I'll play the game one last time, thought Hiashi to himself as he immediately began concocting a plan that would ultimately save his family. Very well, I'll accept your wager, said Hiashi. The grins on the elders' faces grew to a point where the only one in the village who could beat them in the grin department was Naruto. But, should Hinata win, you will never threaten her with the possibility of being sealed again. You will never seal her, nor will you even think about sealing her. Those are my terms. The elders' smirks disappeared instantly. They had been expecting Hiashi to counter with something that would simply buy him more time, but not this. While this event was unexpected, they had come prepared to win, so it didn't matter. Either way, they would have her sealed by the end of the day. Harabi pulled a scroll out from inside his robe and handed it to Hiashi, stating the terms of the wager. Hiashi scribed in his own terms, full immunity from the seal for Hinata. He then bit his own finger and signed the scroll with his own B seal as the elders did the same. This way, neither side would be able to back away or try anything afterwards. Very well, said Harabi. Doranji, please go and prepare the brand. Doranji, son of the elder Moriko, merely bowed and left. Hiashi glared at them as he went and took his place next to Hanabi, who was next to Ino and the rest of Team 10, while the remaining Konoha 12 and their senseis were in the row in front of them, including one Yuhi Kurenai who was now shooting him a dirty look. Apparently, she had overheard his little bet, and if Hinata was sealed because of this, he'd have hell to pay. Father, why? Asked a concerned Hanabi. She had read his lips using her own Byakugan to see behind her and knew exactly what Hiashi had agreed to. Because, I have absolute faith in your sister. She will win and everything will be fine, I promise you, said Hiashi. You shouldn't make promises you can't keep, Hiashi, commented Moriko, a few rows back. I don't, replied Hiashi with a stern tone. Will Hyuga Shinji and Hyuga Hinata please remain down here while the rest of you can proceed to the waiting area, said Genma. So Hinata's the one who gets to kick Shinji's A. As much as I was hoping to do so, it's best if she does it, thought Naruto. Besides, Naruto looked over towards Sasuke and received the same look back. It was really happening. In just 5 matches. Hinata, Naruto said to her. Hinata merely responded with a look that told Naruto everything. Shinji had hurt and insulted the ones that were closest to her and there was no way she'd let him get away with that. As it was now just Hinata and Shinji down on the field, Genma started the match. I feel honored. I get to be the one to show everyone just how pathetic you really are, taunted Shinji. As I said before, call me whatever you want, but I will not let you get away with what you have done to Neji Nisan. Declared Hinata, activating her Byakugan and slipping into the Yusho stance. Shinji did the same, only using the Yuken stance as the Yusho was below him. Shinji made the first moves, lashing out with a Yuken strike at Hinata, who easily moved out of the way. Shinji sent a few more strikes towards the heiress, who managed to float just barely out of his reach. Shinji struck again with an extended arm and this time, Hinata spun around his attack and struck his upper arm with a wind-infused strike. Shinji managed to move away just in time to avoid another strike. As he gained some room to breathe, he clenched his arm in pain. While he had seen what Hinata's strikes were capable in her previous match, he had not expected them to hurt this bad or do as much damage as they did. Examining his own tenketsu in his upper right arm, it was easy to see that the tenketsu was shattered beyond recognition and even he doubted that he would ever be able to use that tenketsu ever again. Damn, those attacks of hers really are troubling, thought Shinji as he began to realize just what he had gotten himself into. Shinji made the next move, charging towards Hinata, but stopping just before he reached her and unleashing a kaiten on her that was able to knock her back before she could move out of the way. Hinata was able to recover herself with a handspring as Shinji engaged her, gaining the upper hand. This time, Hinata was forced to parry the blows and Shinji was able to get a few tenketsu on her arms. Hinata jumped backwards, faster than Shinji could move forward, buying herself enough room to retaliate. Yusho, protection of the 8 trigrams. Hinata called out her ultimate defense. Shinji found himself unable to break from his current collision course with the sea sphere as he collided head-on before being thrown back. This earned him a good number of severe sea throughout his entire body. Yeah, go Nisan, cheered Hanabi from the stands, earning a few glares from the Hyuga elders. Hanabi simply put an innocent look on her face. Catching this out of the corner of her eye, Ino was now resisting every urge to scream out, kawaii, and pinch the younger Hyuga's cheeks. Shinji, in pain, forced himself to his feet. He needed something or else there was no way we was going to win. Thankfully, he still had his trump card. This ought to be interesting, he said, making a one-handed seal that every Hyuga was familiar with. Activate. What's he doing? He knows the seal won't work on Neji Nisan. Thought Hinata as she frantically turned around to a scream echoing from the contestant box. Neji, shouted Naruto, Lee, Sakura, and well, everyone who realized what was going on. However, mere moments after the pain started it stopped, but the activation of the seal had achieved its purpose. Yuken, 8 trigrams, 64 palm. Shouted Shinji as he took this opportunity to strike Hinata with 64 rapid consecutive strikes. Hinata! Shouted Naruto from the box. Hiashi looked over at the elders, who had massive grins plastered on their face. That was a dirty trick, playing on Hinata's concern for her brother figure like that. Before Hinata could collapse to the ground, Shinji lashed out with a chakra-laced palm straight to her sea, sending a burst of chakra through Hinata's heart. Hinata dropped to her knees and began coughing up B. I told you it was worthless. Proctor, I suggest you call the match now before her condition gets any worse, said Shinji, noticing her heart began to convulse irregularly. Genma stood silent. He very much wanted to smack Shinji hard after that little stunt. No. Hinata shouted out, coughing up B. I will not give. Pathetic. You're a failure now, and you'll always be a failure. I wouldn't be surprised if you're sealed after this match. Perhaps then, you'll finally learn your place, mocked Shinji. No, it's time. You learn yours. With those words, Hinata disappeared in a puff of smoke. What? Shouted Shinji. He had completely forgotten about Hinata's ability to use shadow clones from the prelims. Hinata came dashing towards Shinji from the trees that lined the outside, where she had been hiding while her clone was toying with him. By the time she was within the 50 meters range that Shinji could see the full 360 in, he was out of time to react and Hinata sa massive wind-infused palm straight into his stomach, which caused Shinji to bend over and clutch it in pain. Yeah, kick his a Hinata, shouted Naruto, Kiba, and many others with similar comments. Where have I seen that trick before? Asked Neji. He had recovered quickly from the seal as it had only been activated for a mere few seconds. Seriously? Asked Sakura. That's practically the same move Naruto used on you during the last Chunin exams. Everyone looked momentarily at Naruto, who had a huge grin on his face as he rubbed the back of his head. Although you actually managed to counter it with your chitin. Yusho, 8 trigrams, 64 palms. Called out Hinata, unleashing the Hyuga move, only adding in wind chakra to the attacks. The results were more devastating than anyone could have ever imagined. Shinji collapsed to the ground, his entire body in immense pain as he felt the chakra circulation throughout his body dwindle to almost nothing. Hiashi looked down from the stands and couldn't help but manage a slight smile. He focused his dojutsu on Shinji's chakra network, or at least what was left of it. While not all of Hinata's strikes had connected with Tenksu, all of them hit some point in his chakra network, shredding it to the point where there was barely enough chakra flowing through his chakra network that his body would be able to perform only the basic functions. Hiashi counted 45 Tenketsu completely destroyed, 10 Tenketsu heavily damaged, and 10 more places along the chakra network where the connections had been severed. However, if there was one area that had sustained heavy damage, it was Shinji's tendon. That first massive chakra burst that Hinata had sent through his stomach hit the tendon, the very core of a person's chakra, shredding many of the chakra pathways that wrapped around the very center of Shinji's chakra. There was one thing Hiashi knew for sure, at the very best, his days as a shinobi were over. Not even Tsunade had the ability to heal the damage his chakra network had sustained, assuming she would be willing to. Winner, Hyuga Hinata, called out Genma as medics came to collect the broken Shinji. Roaring applause was heard throughout the entire stadium as Hinata was not sure what to do now. Hiashi practically had to force himself not to look behind him at the Hyuga elders' faces, or else he would have made a huge scene by bursting out in a fit of laughter, unbefitting of a Hyuga. Hinata looked up towards the contestant box to see Naruto dangling upside down with Neji and Sasuke trying to reel him back up. Needless to say, Naruto had a little too much energy at that point and sent himself flying over the edge of the rail. Sakura was on her way down as Temari simply floated over top the dangling Naruto, gliding to the arena on her fan. Despite everyone's celebrations, that was only the first match and there was more yet to come. The stadium quieted down as Sakura entered the arena. What took you so long? I was afraid I'd have time to go buy my own pink wig, taunted Temari a bit. You have a problem with pink? Asked a slightly ticked Sakura. She was getting tired of everyone questioning her hair. Oh dear, she made fun of the hair, commented Haruno Kazashi from a few rows back of the Konoha 12. Everyone turned to see Sakura's parents but was shocked to see that it was her father that Sakura got the pink hair from. Last time someone did that, I was afraid we'd have to remodel the block. Oh come now dear, just be quiet and watch our daughter, commented Sakura's mother, Mebuki. Shikamaru sighed. Troublesome, he said. What was that? Shouted Temari from the arena, directing her voice directly at Shikamaru. Begin, called Genma before this turned into an all-out cat fight. Sakura made the first move, running at Temari with her red fist and driving it forward at the Suna blonde. Temari just smirked and moved her collapsed fan to block. While she was nowhere near Lee's taijutsu level, she could handle herself against some little, genjutsu using girl. That is until Sakura's fist made contact with Temari's fan and a shockwave L through the Suna Kanoiki's body and sent her sliding back a few feet. Damn, what the hell was that? She hits harder than that Lee kid, thought Temari as she opened her fan before Sakura could make her next move. Temari made a quick spinning motion that whipped up a tornado that threw Sakura back away from Temari and resulted in a few -C on her skin as a result of the wind. Sakura immediately rebounded and threw a volley of senbon towards Temari just as the blonde stopped spinning. Temari, however, saw this coming and whipped her fan just in time, creating a wall of wind to knock away Sakura's attack. Futon. Tornado scythe. Temari swung her fan, creating a rather large tornado that twisted and ran towards Sakura. Kaiten. Great fireball jutsu. Shouted Sakura, blowing a large fireball that shot towards the tornado and intercepted Temari's attack, resulting in a flaming whirlwind that soon dispersed as the two attacks cancelled each other out. When Sakura could see through the flames, Temari was gone. Before Sakura could get a bearing on her opponent, she found herself blasted by a strong gust of dust and sand that blinded her. Futon. Sickle weasel technique. Temari's gust of sea wind caught Sakura unaware, blasting her into the air. As Sakura fell to the ground, Temari smirked. She wouldn't be getting up after that. Looking over, Sakura was out like a log, literally. Temari looked up to see Sakura coming down upon her and Temari collapsed her fan to block the incoming fist as she braced herself with chakra. Sakura's fist met Temari's fan in a downward strike, sending yet another painful shockwave through the Kanoiki and causing the ground to buckle beneath Temari. Damn, Billboard brows got some strength, commented Ino. She had agreed to stop calling Sakura by her nickname, but old habits hard. Troublesome, replied Shikamaru, earning a ticked-off expression from Ino. Temari had managed to get away from Sakura. That last blow had hurt and she could feel it in her legs. Both opponents were staring at each other from across the crater in the ground. Sakura merely let out a small smirk as she charged head-on towards Temari. She doesn't think she can win like this, does she? Thought Temari as she used the same move from before, spinning and creating a tornado around her that blew Sakura back. Only it didn't blow Sakura back. As Sakura made contact with the wind, she burst apart into countless Sakura blossoms that began to swirl with the tornado Temari had created. A few of the Sakura blossoms approached Temari, who started off by blowing them away with her own fan. Only, instead of blowing them away, the blossoms split into even more petals. Temari felt a few stinging sensations on her arm and before she knew it, she collapsed to the ground unable to move her body and the flurry of blossoms stopped with Sakura standing behind her and smiling. That one's new, kind of, commented Kakashi. We took her cherry blossom blizzard and upgraded it. It was originally a C-rank genjutsu but I'd say it's now B or maybe even B+. It's much harder to dispel and every failed attempt at dispelling it only multiples the number of cherry blossoms, commented Kurenai. That technique still has some potential to be developed even further though. She really does have some amazing genjutsu potential. If she can find some way to train that while training her medical jutsu over the next few years, damn. Sakura's got a lot of work out for her it looks like, thought Kakashi. Let me know if you want to trade students anytime, Kakashi. I'm sure Kiba won't mind, said Kurenai. Hey, that's mean, Kurenai-sensei. Retorted Kiba. Everyone laughed at the Jonan's little joke while Kiba pouted a little. Kurenai-sensei, don't be so mean to Kiba, defended Hinata, who was standing at the top of the stands. And there she is, our little winner, said Kureni, going up to Hinata and giving her student a hug. Nisan, shouted Hanabi as she ran to her sister. Hinata made her way down the stairs, either oblivious of or just simply ignoring the looks the elders were shooting her. She took a seat next to Kurenai and in front of her father. Hiyashi looked down at his daughter, and then over to Hanabi. He had saved one, and he already knew how to save the other. It was only a matter of time before the elders tried to make their next move and he would make his. Back in the arena, Genma declared Sakura the winner as Temari was unable to move due to the paralytic poison in her system. For Sakura, there was a loud applause, not as much for Hinata, but enough where she didn't know what to do besides just stand there and smile. Yosh! Sakura's flames burn as bright as ever, shouted Lee. It was time, his match was finally here and it was against the one person he had been asked to fight ever since he became a part of Team Guy, his own eternal rival Neji. Neji had already made his way down to the arena the moment he saw that Sakura had Temari and Lee followed shortly after the match was called. Up in the stands, everyone could feel the tension around them rise. The source of this tension, Guy. Guy, is everything okay? Asked Kakashi. Tears began streaming from Guy. I've waited for this day to come ever since I got my team. My students will finally battle in a contest of youth that knows no bounds. Today, they will burn brighter than the sun itself as their youths soar to even greater heights. If that happens, they'd probably burn down the village, commented Kakashi. Guy clenched his fist and a sparkle appeared in his eye at the time when Lee and Neji took the field. Lee, Neji. Lee turned up towards the stand. Guy sensei. Oh hell no, thought Neji. One Team Guy group hug was enough, and that was to convince Lee to get the surgery. Unless Lee was going to have another life-risking operation, there was no way he was going to get in the middle of the two green-clad shinobi. Yosh! Now show everyone your spectacle of youth, shouted Guy, causing everyone within hearing distance being the 5 elemental nations and even a few continents beyond that, to sweat drop. Neji, he is right. I have waited for this day since the very moment I was placed on your team, declared Lee. I look forward to a most excellent match. I have to, Lee. I admit I was wrong in the past, but now I understand. I see you now as a worthy rival and have been looking forward to the time when I can prove to myself just how strong I have become, said Neji. He then pointed at Lee's legs. Take 'em off. What? But Guy-sensei told me never to, replied Lee. I don't care what Guy-sensei said. I expect nothing short of your very best, so take 'em off, said Neji. Lee, unsure of what to do but after looking at Neji, he understood. As such, Lee bent down and removed his weights, throwing them aside as if they were nothing. The weights crashed into the ground, shaking the stadium upon impact and leaving a horrified expression on almost everyone's face. They knew Guy was extreme, but those weights were just plain ridiculous. Begin, said Genma, jumping out of the way before he could get caught in between them. Lee and Neji both assumed their positions and it was Lee who made the first move. Lee dashed off towards Neji at speeds that only a shinobi could follow. Konoha Senpu, shouted Lee as he lashed out with a sweeping high kick. Neji blocked Lee's initial kick and used that as a springboard to push him over top of Lee's lower kick and Lee himself. Neji struck at Lee with a few yuken strikes that Lee barely parried. Lee saw a slight opening at Neji and struck with a hard fist. Neji barely managed to block, but this resulted in him skidding back a few feet. Immediately, Lee was off. He began running around Neji, becoming a blur that looked as if her was everywhere. While doing so, Neji kept his calm, relying on his Byakugan to keep an eye on where Lee would be coming from. Then, Lee made his move. Kaiten, called out Neji, catching Lee in his defense before Lee could land a blow. This sent Lee flying back towards the wall. 8 trigrams vacuum palm. As his rotation came to a halt, Neji thrust his hand forward, sending a blast of compressed chakra towards Lee. Lee just barely managed to push off the wall in time to avoid the small crater that Neji's attack made. Now I actually do see what you were talking about now, Hiyashi-sama, commented Asuma, referring to when Hiyashi was inquiring about Hinata and Naruto's futon, pressure palm. You're absolutely certain that there were no wind uses in your clan before? Hiyashi honestly wasn't so sure. There never have been any wind uses in our clan, replied Harabi with a harsh voice as he glared at Hiyashi, and then down at Hinata. Hiyashi could tell that something wasn't quite right about that statement though. I'll look into it, Asuma-san, replied Hiyashi. Back in the arena, Lee and Neji had been engaging one another in taijutsu for a few minutes now and they were going at each other hard. Neji had landed a few palm thrusts on Lee, but at the same time, Lee's attacks were slowly beginning to wear on Neji. Neji had either managed to dodge or parry most of Lee's attacks, but the ones that he was forced to block were beginning to strain his arm, even after reinforcing it with chakra. Lee used Neji's next palm thrust to push him away from Neji, a considerable distance for him to prepare himself for what was next. Lee began unwrapping his bandages and everyone who knew Lee knew what was coming. Gate of opening, open. Lee shouted, opening the first of the 8 gates. He took off towards Neji at blinding speeds that only a few select people in the audience could see him. Sasuke even needed his Sharingan now to be able to clearly watch Lee. Before Neji could react, Lee sa foot into Neji's stomach, sending him into the air. Lee then shadowed and wrapped Neji up in bandages before he began the spiraling descent into the ground. Damn, I need something quick or he's going to spiral me into the ground, thought Neji. Wait, spiral. As Lee and Neji barreled towards the ground, Neji unleashed a strong burst of chakra from his tenketsu. Kaiten. The blue dome of chakra managed to form and Lee was forced away from Neji, throwing him across the stadium and into the far wall as Neji still continued to fall towards the ground, creating a crater when he and the Kaiten met the ground beneath them. Neji struggled to pick himself out of the crater. The Kaiten had broken most of the fall, but he still sustained some damage. First, there was his right arm. That arm had taken quite a beating already, and the way in which he landed, he was pretty sure it was fractured, if not close to broken already. There was also a limp in this right leg, indicating that his hip was injured as well. The last of the more significant injuries was a trickle of B coming from beneath the side of his forehead protector, indicating some sort of head injury. Lee wasn't much better off. Normally, he would have disengaged Neji just before impact and landed safely. However, Neji's Kaiten threw him off in an uncontrollable flight directly into a stone wall. Like Neji, Lee struggled to pick himself out of the hole in the wall and the entire stadium was on edge. Neji, you truly are a worth rival. You have found a way to counter my initial lotus and use it against me. Forgive me, Guy-sensei, but I must use it. I must prove to everyone that I can be a splendid ninja, thought Lee. Neji looked on as Lee gathered himself and a massive chakra pulse was felt throughout the stadium as Lee opened the next few gates. Gate of healing, open. Gate of life, open. Gate of pain, open. Lee's skin turned red and many people gasped. Guy-sensei, is Lee really going to? Asked a concerned Tenten. Guy let out a breath. Looks like it. That counter of Neji's took a lot out of both of them. Lee's always seen Neji as his rival and with this match, they are willing to push each other to the very limit. I wouldn't be surprised if it ended here. Please let it end here. While Guy wanted to see his students fight to his very best, they were already pushing themselves way past a safe limit. That Barker. I told him no more than one gate. Shouted Sunad. She was still monitoring Lee's progress after the operation and was still concerned about how much stress his body could take at this point. One gate was pushing it, but 4. Neji took the time that Lee was using to open the gates to center himself and gather chakra. Lee shot towards Neji, at speeds that made his previous speed look like a turtle. He shot his fist towards Neji as Neji unleashed his attack. Kaiten. A smaller, yet more condensed and stronger sphere of chakra enveloped Neji as he spun and a massive explosion ensued that sent a blur flying back into wall. Hyuga-sama, what was that? That wasn't Neji's normal Kaiten, commented Guy. You're right, it wasn't. Ever since Naruto bested Neji in the previous exams, Neji has been constantly looking to improve himself and the Hyuga absolute defense. What you just saw was the result of his endeavor, explained Hiashi. He gives his chakra an earthen nature before expelling it, hardening and reinforcing it. He also condenses it as well for added strength, which is why the dome is much smaller than normal. His normal Kaiten most likely would have failed to an attack of that power, but down in the arena, Neji stood in the middle of a large crater that was created by the explosion. He was panting heavily and down on his knees. When the dust settled at the wall, Lee was lying in a pile of rubble unconscious as Genma came to check on Lee. I declare Hyuga Neji the winner, said Genma. Cheers erupted through the stands. That had been a good match and both fighters were worthy of praise afterwards. Neji collapsed even further, his entire body exhausted and in pain. Lee, the one who he used to see as a failure who should just give up on being a ninja, had managed to push him, the Hyuga prodigy, to the very edge. Had this fight dragged on for just a moment longer, it was very likely that Neji would have lost. He had used up the remaining chakra in that last defense, his body was shaken from the following explosion, and he was pretty sure he had a broken arm amongst other things. We will be taking a 30-minute intermission to repair the field, announced Genma as a few ninja came onto the arena, most likely Earth users. The previous matches, primarily Lee and Neji's, had torn the field to shreds with a series of craters and uplifted ground. Guy was down in the arena moments later as he came to Neji's side and placed a hand on Neji's shoulder before helping Neji over to Lee. "How is he?" asked Guy. Tsunade had come down to check on Lee's condition to make sure no permanent damage had been done to the bushy-eyebrowed genin. "He's lucky. Nothing permanent was done, but he's not going to be leaving the hospital for a few weeks while he recovers," diagnosed Tsunade. "UHG, Guy-sensei, Tsunade-sama, Neji," Lee said as he slowly regained consciousness. "Did I? I'm sorry, Lee, but this match is mine," replied Neji. "I see, Guy-sensei, I am sorry," replied Lee. "Nonsense. I'm so proud of you, Lee. You fought with all your heart and you proved yourself out there today," shouted Guy with tears flowing anime style from his eyes. "Lee, you pushed me farther than anyone has ever pushed me. You fought an excellent match today and I am proud that I was your opponent. You truly are becoming a splendid ninja," said Neji. "Neji," said Lee, looking straight at his teammate. "Yosh, I will redouble my training efforts and next time we meet, I will come out victorious. If I do not, I will." "Can it?" growled Sund. "You won't be leaving the hospital for the next few weeks while your body recovers. Don't worry, Lee, rest today. Your youthful flames have burned so bright today. Rest them now, and we will make them burn even brighter tomorrow," declared Guy. "Guy-sensei, Lee." Neji began backing away slowly. "Guy-sensei, Lee." Before Neji could get far enough away, Guy had him in a headlock as he and Lee embraced one another with an ocean sunset in the background. Poor Neji, sighed Tenten as she witnessed Neji getting caught in the very center of whatever sort of genjutsu Guy and Lee were creating. Every ninja in the stands was trying their best to dispel it, but to no avail. Neji and Lee were taken away to receive medical treatment and the Earth users began their work on repairing the stadium. It was at around this time that Hyuga Doranji had returned to the stadium. "Harabi-sama, I have prepared the sealing brand for Hinata." "What?" shouted everyone within hearing distance. The most shocked of them all was Hinata herself. The Jonin were glad that Naruto wasn't around to hear that, or else Konoha might very well be dealing with a second Kyuubi attack this very moment. "Seal," replied Hinata. She knew that if she was sealed, just about any hopes she had of being with Naruto were gone. She looked pleadingly towards her father. Had he really just given the go-ahead to have her sealed? Doranji's attention was turned to the elders, who were fuming at the very thought. "Thank you, Doranji, but that won't be necessary. However, if you would modify the seal for a male, about a year older than Hinata, then that would be perfect," said Hiashi. "Father, what's going on? Are you really having me sealed?" asked Hinata, as a few tears came to her eyes. Hiashi sent a reassuring smile at her daughter. "No, not today and not ever," said Hiashi, producing the scroll that had the bet between he and the elders. Hinata read it over and was shocked at her father. "I had absolute faith in you. And I was getting tired of those old fools trying to break up my family." "I wouldn't say that, Hiashi. Seeing as Hinata can no longer be sealed, we are forced to have Hanabi sealed. After all, no family can have more than one unsealed child," said Uro, turning his attention towards a particular brown-haired Hyuga girl. "No," gasped Hinata as she looked towards her younger sister, who now had a horrified look on her face. Uro smirked. "Of course, we could always spare Hanabi, should Hinata volunteer herself willingly. Even after they had lost the bet, they would get her. There was no way the kind and gentle Hinata would let her sweet little sister be sealed." Hiashi merely laughed at this, something that was rarely seen from a Hyuga. "Check and mate. You really wouldn't seal the heir to the Hyuga clan now, would you?" laughed Hiashi. "Hey, not bad at all," said Shikamaru. If anyone got what Hiashi was thinking, it was the Nara Chunin. "What are you talking about, Hiashi?" barked Moriko. "You know exactly what I'm talking about. After all, you've been asking me to make a decision for the past 4 years. I've decided and as of now, Hanabi is and will be the heir to the clan," explained Hiashi. "What? But that's Nissan's position," argued Hanabi. It was true that she did in fact want to be the heir of the clan, but Hanabi wasn't willing to let it be taken away from her sister like this. All this time, Poor Hinata's head was spinning. First she thought her father was proud of her for becoming strong. Then she finds out that the elders have prepared the sealing brand for her. Afterwards, her father tells her that she is not going to be sealed and that he made a deal to grant her immunity from being sealed. Just moments after that, the elders claim they're going to seal Hanabi unless she takes Hanabi's place. And then her father declares Hanabi the clan heir, right in front of her. By doing so this would mean that she gets branded into the branch house, but, oh. Now she got it. Hinata rested her hand on Hanabi's head. Don't worry Hanabi-chan. Everything will be alright. Besides, you were always the one who wanted to be the future clan head anyways, said Hinata. It was true. Hinata honestly didn't care about becoming clan head. The only reason she didn't just forfeit it willingly was because she would be sealed and any chances at her having a future with a particular blonde would be sealed away with her. But Neeson, if I'm clan head, then that means you're going to be, rambled Hanabi until Hinata held up the B-bound contract in front of her. Oh. Wait, what the hell is going on? Shouted Kiba. Hiashi grumbled. He still hadn't fully forgiven Kiba for that one incident, although things were looking better between those two. Fine, I'll explain. The bet I made before Hinata's fight stated that if she won, she would be granted full immunity from being branded. If she lost, then she would be branded. I decided to accept, because I can honestly say that, for the first time, I have absolute faith in Hinata's abilities, that and I was getting tired of the elders' constant attempts to have her branded. Seeing as Hinata won, she's now immune from being sealed. Now, up until this point, I have not officially declared the clan heir. It should have gone to Hinata by birthright, but because of my foolish actions, that birthright was S from her and she would have to earn it when she turned 16 if I had not declared a clan heir by then. However, I have decided now that the elders were right about something and that Hanabi would make the better clan heir, thus making her immune from being sealed. So, in other words, thought Kiba for a moment. The elders won't be laying their fingers on either of my daughters any time soon, said Hiashi, sending a glare that only a father who was protective of his daughters could send. Hiashi had the elders by their rotten tongues and they did the only thing they could do now, make a hasty retreat back into whatever hole they crawled out of and scheme up the next plot. I see, I shall go put away the brand right away sir, said Doranji. Like I said, that won't be necessary. Someone will be sealed, but they have done everything to deserve it, said Hiashi. Everyone knew who Hiashi was referring to. He then pulled Doranji away for a moment. I need to ask you a question and I need you to answer me honestly. Your wife is pregnant, isn't she? Hi, Hiashi-sama, responded Doranji. He had honestly been hoping to hide that fact for a while. And you do in fact love your family and the child your wife is about to bear, am I correct? Asked Hiashi. Doranji seemed very upset by Hiashi's question. Why would you even ask that? Of course I love my family, he soon realized where Hiashi was getting at. His wife was currently only 2 months pregnant with their second child. A second child in the Hyuga main branch meant that he would have to have one of his children branded at some point. You see where I'm getting at, don't you? Asked Hiashi. Doranji nodded. You were always hesitant when following your father's orders, but you did so because he is your father. Perhaps it's time you start doing what you want to do. You love your family, I know you do. And I know you don't want to see anything happen to them, said Hiashi, placing a hand on Doranji's shoulder. Change is coming. I can feel it. And when it comes, I would very much appreciate your support. Hiashi began to walk away, leaving the main branch Hyuga to his thoughts. Hiashi-sama, said Doranji in a quiet tone. Hiashi paused for a brief moment. Will my family be able to remain just that? A family? If everything works out right, then yes, replied Hiashi with firm voice. If whatever's coming will help my family, then I'll help, replied Doranji. Good. For now, nothing will happen. I'm still missing a big piece. But be prepared, that time will come shortly, replied Hiashi as he returned to his family. Both Hinata and Hanabi were still celebrating their father's victory over the elders. Perhaps now, they could truly act like sisters without worry about the other. Moments later, the stadium began to cheer as Genma announced that the fourth match would now be starting. In a flurry of sand and bugs, Gaara and Shino took the field. Oh good, I didn't miss it, commented Fu, who had just arrived at the stadium. being escorted by Shizune. The two had managed to pick up Sakura somewhere along the way through the stadium. Yeah, Lee and Neji did a number to the field and they had to take an intermission, commented Kiba. How have the matches gone so far? Asked Fu. Hinata here won hers, said Kurenai, pointing to a smiling Hinata. Sakura won hers as well against Temari. And Neji won his, but barely. But Shino's opponent is going to be hard. I honestly wouldn't want to go up against Gaara, added Kiba. Genma looked at the two compeers before signaling the start of the match. For what seemed like the first minute, the two just stared at each other in silence as everyone anticipated the first move. Shino and Gaara just looked at each other before dispersing in a cloud of insects and sand. Both were a bug and sand clone, respectively, and both had been thinking the same thing. The real Shino and Gaara came out from their hiding spots as they were now surrounded by their sand and bugs. Gaara lashed out with his sand which Shino found himself dodging. Over the past months, if there was one thing Shino had been working on, it was his agility and ability to better defend himself, as that was probably his biggest weakness. While Shino was doing this, his insects were sent towards Gaara, who was fending them off with blasts of sand. What was happening here was that Shino's bugs were sucking the chakra out of the sand, rendering it useless for Gaara until he could re-infuse it with chakra. However, at the same time, the blows Shino's insects were taking from Gaara's sand would kill a few of them each time they got his. Shino continued his backpedaling until he ran into a wall of sand that Gaara had established behind him, see the aberrame off. Shino soon found him encased in Gaara's sand cocoon. I suggest you surrender, said Gaara, making a fist and squeezing slightly on his sand for emphasis. It would seem you have captured me, but you can never be sure, said Shino as the sand surrounding him began to crumble away. The moment Shino found himself captured, the insects he kept on himself immediately went to work draining the chakra out of Gaara's sand to a point where the sand was weak enough to break free from. Ninpo, hidden beetle sphere, called out Shino as a mass of his insects erupted from ground beneath Gaara and surrounded him, encasing Gaara in a sphere of insects. Sand shuriken, called out Gaara as countless sand blasts came shooting out from around Gaara, knocking Shino's insects away and even catching Shino with one or two. Before Shino was able to surround Gaara with his insects, Gaara had surrounded himself with enough sand and acted quick enough to use it to repel the insects. Had he have waited too long, Shino's insects would have rendered the sand useless. Gaara had to admit that Konoha did in fact have some worthy adversaries. However, he was ready to end this match. Gaara s his hands onto the ground beneath him. Sand tsunami. As he called out his next move, a massive tidal wave of sand fell from the ground underneath Gaara and crashed towards Shino, catching him and all of his bugs in the wave of sand. Desert burial, shouted Gaara as he pushed down onto the ground, compressing the sand and crushing almost everything beneath it. Out of the sand rose another sand cocoon. That sand tsunami wasn't meant to kill Shino, just the bugs, so Gaara simply captured Shino. I'll say it again. Surrender or your insects won't be the only things I crush. Sensing something behind him, Gaara immediately turned around to see Shino running towards him. Shino's last remaining bugs shot out of his arm and towards Gaara, who swatted him away and wrapped the real Shino up in sand. He then opened the top of the sand coffin that he initially thought had Shino in it, only to reveal that he had captured a bug clone. Before Gaara could crush the bug clone, Shino spoke. Wait, I surrender, said Shino as Gaara stopped himself before crushing Shino's insects and releasing them from his grasp. I thank you for not crushing them. They are the last of my hive and are worth more than this match. I see, said Gaara as he gathered his sand back into his gourd. That was a good match. You were most certainly a stronger opponent than most I have faced. Winner, Sabaku no Gaara, announced Genma as the audience cheered. So, what do you think? Asked Asuma. Shino fought a good match and it was obvious, but that Gaara's just too strong of an opponent, commented Kakashi. As Gaara and Shino cleared the field, Naruto and Sasuke looked at each other one last time before heading down. It really did come down to this. All their past contests had been just that, contests. Who could climb the tree first, who could learn a jutsu first. But this, a full-out battle between the two of them. They would finally find out who was truly the stronger. So what are you thinking, Kakashi? Asked Asuma. They are your students after all. Kakashi thought for a moment while everyone tuned towards the one-eyed Jonin to get his opinion. If I know those two, they'll probably end up each other. This should be interesting. Kakashi smiled and a horrified look overtook everyone else's face. Couldn't he have a little more faith in his students? They saw Naruto and Sasuke take the field and a deafening shriek, that only a Banshee mother would be proud of, through the stands. Its source, Sasuke's fan club. These were the useless fangirls who had flunked out of the academy after realizing their precious Sasuke would no longer be there. However, now they were about to watch their precious Sasuke put Naruto Barker in his place, just like every spar from the academy, or so they thought. So this is really happening, said Naruto as he turned to face his opponent. Naruto, Sasuke called out and their eyes met. I acknowledge you, I have always acknowledged you, which is why out of everyone, you're the one I've wanted to fight the most. You'd better not hold back, Dobe. Naruto smiled. And if there was anyone who I wanted to acknowledge me, it was you. It's about time we get this chance to settle things. You'd better not disappoint me, team. Begin, called out Genma. Before he could get out of the way, Naruto and Sasuke had bolted towards each other at speeds that even Lee would be jealous of. Naruto threw the first punch, which Sasuke blocked with his palm and retaliated with a knee that Naruto blocked with his free arm. Sasuke then quickly placed his foot down for balance and used the other foot to kick Naruto on the side. Naruto saw this coming and placed his now free hand in the path of Sasuke's sweeping kick, removing his fist from Sasuke's hand and using the kick to disengage the two of them. Sasuke pulled out a kunai, Naruto doing the same, and they went at it again as the sound of clanging metal was heard throughout the stadium. Sasuke blocked Naruto's following swipe, but leaned back just in time to avoid the real attack. Naruto wasn't using a regular kunai, he was using the tri-pronged kunais, enhanced with wind chakra. As a result, Naruto's kunai cleaned through Sasuke's kunai, and nearly his head if it hadn't been for his reaction time and the Sharingan. Now it was Sasuke's turn to disengage. Damn, that kunai's going to be a pain in the thought Sasuke, looking at the foot-long wind blade coming out of Naruto's kunai. That weapon gave Naruto an advantage at close range as a wind blade wasn't something Sasuke could block all that easily. Sasuke was already thinking of a way to get that kunai from Naruto. He knew Naruto had more than one, 3 if he remembered correctly, but if he could get one off of Naruto, then that would take away Naruto's weapon advantage. Sasuke unleashed a few shuriken at Naruto and Naruto grinned when Sasuke's attack missed. But then Naruto remembered that Sasuke would normally use ninja wire with his shuriken in this case and swiped with his kunai, see the wire that Sasuke had attacked to the shuriken before he could do anything. Sasuke merely grinned as he flicked his finger and one of the shuriken that Naruto had not seen wrapped itself around Naruto's kunai. Sasuke then tugged back on the string, pulling the tri-pronged kunai from Naruto's grasp and into his own. Naruto growled as Sasuke smirked. I see, so that was your target, commented Naruto as he pulled out his second tri-pronged kunai. I will admit, these knives are pretty nice. Perhaps I should keep this one, said Sasuke, ticking Naruto off a little. He channeled some chakra into his and making it glow red hot. He had made sure to use fire chakra in the knife instead of lightning due to the elemental advantage fire has over wind. The two ran towards each other again, chakra pulsing through their kunais. The two kunais clashed and the mixing of wind chakra and fire chakra sent a flare straight into Naruto's face. Sasuke used this distraction to give Naruto a good strong kick in the stomach, sending his blonde rival kidding back. By the time Naruto got to his feet, Sasuke was going through hand seals and Naruto raced through his own. Kaiten, Fire Dragon Bullet. Futon, Wind Dragon Bullet. The two jutsu met in the middle, creating a giant fireball that forced the two opponents back. The audience, unless they were an Aberrame who already wore sunglasses, was forced to shield their eyes at the intensity of the blaze in the middle. Sasuke looked on as the blaze began to but was caught when a barrage of over 100 shuriken hurled towards him. Unlike most ninja, who would normally panic at this point, Sasuke kept his calm, analyzing the incoming shuriken shadow clone jutsu with his Sharingan. With a few quick motions of the chakra kunai, Sasuke managed to block or deflect every single kunai that was heading towards him. EEEKKK. Sasuke's the best, shrieked his fan club after Sasuke had shown how smooth he was in blocking Naruto's assault. Ino and Sakura looked over towards the hopeless fangirls and sweat dropped. Please tell me we were never like that, asked Sakura to Ino. Are you kidding me? You two were the queens of the fangirls, commented Kiba. That was probably something he shouldn't have said as he felt two hard fists into the top of his head. Ino and Sakura smiled at each other and turned their attention back to the fight. On the other side of the fireball, Naruto grinned. He knew no one that had taken that jutsu head-on and made it out completely unscathed, so it came as a surprise when Sasuke came bursting through the smoke in the middle and knocked Naruto to the ground, hard. Sasuke placed the kunai near Naruto's tea and Naruto could feel the heat radiating off of it. Looks like I win, commented Sasuke. Yeah, the day that happens will be the day I KO Yura, retorted Naruto disappearing in a puff of smoke. Sasuke, skate. To be honest, he was expecting something like that. Now the question was, where is the real Naruto? He looked around, trying to pick out any source of chakra around the field, but the only other source of chakra was the knife he was carrying. Immediately, Sasuke's eyes snapped open as he tossed the knife aside. However, he was too late. Before the knife could leave his hands, it puffed back into Naruto and Sasuke felt a fist connect with his face. Wait, that transformation wasn't a genjutsu, stated a surprised Kurenai. You're right, which probably explains why he had such a hard time learning a jutsu as simple as a transformation, commented Iruka. I recently discovered the reason why Naruto could never pull a normal transformation back in the academy was because his chakra reserves were always too large to allow for a jutsu that only required such a small amount of chakra. I was ecstatic the moment Naruto actually pulled off a decent transformation, but I had no idea until I brought him back for show and tell day that his transformation was actually a true transformation. Iruka-sensei, what's a true transformation? Asked Ino. It's an advanced transformation that actually transforms you into the targeted object, not just a simple genjutsu. It's also a Jonin level skill. Everyone thought Naruto was a complete and utter failure as a ninja, yet he actually graduated with 2 Jonin level skills under his belt, commented Iruka. Why? If Naruto was actually that skilled, then why was he the last? Asked Ino. Iruka remained silent. Because he was sabotaged by his teachers, commented Kakashi. Sabotaged, shouted all the genin there. Why would someone try to sabotage Naruto? You all know the reason why, commented Kakashi as he turned to a now surprised Iruka. Yes, they know. And don't worry yourself. You were the first teacher to actually come around and truly care about Naruto's education, but there was nothing you could have done about the other half dozen or so teachers Naruto had, including one who even tried to have him branded as a traitor. They all turned their attention back to the fight to see Naruto create 3 clones which charged at Sasuke. While Naruto was making them, Sasuke caught the slight change in hand signs and knew he couldn't let those clones get near him. As such, he began retreating, but the clones were getting closer and by the time Naruto felt they were close enough, they exploded. Naruto smirked. That got him. That had to have gotten him. Naruto's, and everyone else's, eyes shot wide open when as a brilliant flame erupted from the center of the smoke as a flaming bird shot forth into the sky. Kaiten, Ascension of the Phoenix, called out Sasuke as the giant flaming phoenix shot forth towards Naruto, igniting the very ground beneath it. What's that? Asked Sakura. I didn't think he'd actually use it. That is the most powerful fire jutsu that Sasuke has at the moment. It's an A-rank jutsu that even I don't know, as it's an Uchiha clan technique. Kaiten, Ascension of the Phoenix, commented Kakashi. Naruto, cried out Hinata. Naruto shook off the surprise and pulled out a different kunai from his side pouch. At first glimpse, this was just an ordinary kunai, but if one looked close enough, they could see that it was covered in a sealing matrix. Naruto then began going through a series of hand seals that no one even recognized. 2. Sha, Zen, Ritsu, Zai, thought Naruto, making the necessary hand seals. Uzumaki Fuinjutsu, Absorption Seal, Fire. As the phoenix closed in on Naruto, the kunai Naruto had in his hand began to glow and an Uzumaki-style seal erupted from it in front of Naruto. The phoenix and the seal met head-on and everyone watched as Sasuke's fire jutsu swirled with the seal, until the seal had absorbed it entirely, resulting in a smirking Naruto and wide-eyed Sasuke. What was that? I didn't even recognize those hand seals, said a surprised Kakashi. An Uzumaki Fuinjutsu, said Jiraiya, rubbing the bruise on the side of his head. Naruto's little clone stunt had reminded Tsunade to punish the one who taught Naruto that jutsu, and as such Jiraiya needed to move away from the cage box, where he was previously, to spare him of any more injury. Everyone turned to Jiraiya for answer. And those hand seals were a part of a 9-hand seal set unique to the Uzumaki-style Fuinjutsu. How could a clan-less loser stop a brilliant jutsu like that of my precious Sasuke? Squealed one of the fangirls. Jiraiya sighed at the fangirl's outburst. Jiraiya-sama, what did you mean by an Uzumaki Fuinjutsu? Asked Tenten. It's exactly what I meant. An Uzumaki Fuinjutsu, a Fuinjutsu of the Uzumaki clan. And a very useful one at that, said Jiraiya. Uzumaki clan. You mean Naruto has a clan? Asked Ino. Well, kind of. To be honest, Naruto's the last of his clan. The Uzumakis were once a very powerful clan from Azuchiogakure no Sato that had close ties with our village. In fact, the Shodime Hokage's wife was an Uzumaki. Uzumaki Mito to be exact, said Jiraiya. Were they really a powerful clan? Asked Kiba. Yes. And you just saw what made them powerful. They were a clan of Fuin masters and this made them feared throughout the elemental nations, said Jiraiya. But what happened to them? If Naruto's the last one, then something had to have happened, asked Shuji. Didn't you guys learn about this in the academy? Asked Jiraiya. Everyone shook their heads and even Iruka gave Jiraiya a confused look. There was nothing regarding an Uzumaki clan in the curriculum at all, said Iruka. I may have mentioned the name when lecturing on the Shodime, but nothing. There's something funny going on here, thought Jiraiya. I'll explain the rest after the match. Looks like Naruto and Sasuke are starting to get back into it. Sasuke grinned at Naruto. Naruto had just brushed away his most powerful fire jutsu like it was nothing. The Dobe was indeed more of a challenge than Sasuke had ever hoped for. That the best you've got, team? Taunted Naruto. HN, you wish, Dobe, replied Sasuke. Kaiten, Dragon Fire Breath. Futon, Great Breakthrough. The two jutsu met in the middle again and Naruto and Sasuke pumped more power into their jutsu, battling for dominance and increasing the size of the fireball in the middle. However, it was then that Sasuke cancelled his jutsu, giving Naruto control over the gigantic fireball and sending it in Sasuke's direction. The moment Sasuke released the jutsu, he started going through another series of hand seals. Kaiten, Dragon's Wrath. Before the fireball could get to him, Sasuke unleashed yet another fire jutsu, aimed straight towards the oncoming supercharged fireball. The two jutsus met and yet another explosion ensued. As Naruto looked on, out of the smoke came Sasuke's jutsu, shaped like a large dragon's head, only much more powerful than any other dragon head-shaped jutsu that Sasuke had yet to unleash. Quickly, Naruto activated the absorption seal to take care of Sasuke's fire jutsu. The jutsu and seal met and the seal won as it absorbed Sasuke's jutsu. As soon as the sealing was complete, Naruto dropped Hikunai. The one downside to that absorption seal was that it could only absorb so much fire jutsu before it overheated to a point where it was beginning to glow red hot and Naruto's hands were burning just by touching it. Raiten, Lightning Cannon, called out Sasuke as he formed the sphere of condensed electricity in his hands and shot it towards Naruto. Naruto reacted just in time to grab his tri-pronged kunai. Futon, Wind Sea, shouted Naruto, driving his kunai straight into the oncoming jutsu. The beam of lightning that was aimed at Naruto split as the wind jutsu and Sasuke's jutsu collided, sending the remnants of the jutsu safely on either side of Naruto. All throughout the stadium, similar thoughts were going around. There was no way these two compeers were only genin. The way they were fighting, people were thinking if these two were competing for the rank of jonin or something even higher. What's the matter? Don't have one of those fancy seals for lightning? Grinned Sasuke. Naruto returned the grin. Hey, only had time for fire. I was too busy working on the suppression seal to beat that slug team. Still more than enough for you though, replied Naruto. Sasuke smirked and activated his flame fist, which was the same as his flame step, only with the fire surrounding his hands. Naruto readied his wind blade and the two engaged in close combat once again. Naruto and Sasuke dodged each other's blows until Naruto caught Sasuke's upper right arm, stopping the flaming fist from S into his face and Sasuke grabbed Naruto's wrist to stop the wind blade from S through his N. The fist that Sasuke caught Naruto's wrist was still on fire and Naruto cringed as his skin burned. What's the matter? Can't take the heat? Asked Sasuke. Naruto smirked back before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Sasuke had been sparring with a clone all this time. The real Naruto came from behind his clone, using it to shield himself from Sasuke's gaze. Futon, pressure palm, shouted Naruto as he shoved a palm-holding compressed wind chakra towards Sasuke. Sasuke reacted just in time to block with his still flaming fist. The two jutsus clashed and both compeers were thrown back by a violent explosion of flames from the meeting of fire and wind. Both compeers stood facing each other, singed and panting. The use of multiple high-ranked jutsu by both of them were beginning to take their toll. However, they weren't going to give up just because they were a little tired. Multi-shadow clone jutsu, shouted Naruto as 24 clones appeared and rushed Sasuke. Sasuke fought off the clones with ease. What's the matter? You're not getting tired on me, are you? Sasuke's attention was sent towards Naruto, who had just completed a long series of hand seals. Sasuke jumped back quick enough to avoid the 20-foot diameter column of pressurized air that Naruto had sent shooting down towards him. Both Naruto and Sasuke collapsed to one knee, feeling the fatigue of this fight start to wear on them. So you are getting tired on me? Come on, even Kakashi's workouts were easier than this, said Sasuke. Hey, you should see yourself, you can barely stand, commented Naruto. So it's come to this, commented Sasuke, forcing himself to a standing position. Hey, it's not over yet, replied Naruto, doing the same. The two compeers locked eyes and they knew it was going to come down to one last move. It was time to find out who truly was stronger. Sasuke went through a few more seals and grabbed his right wrist while the hand was pointing down. The sound of birds filled the stadium as Sasuke activated his Chidori. Naruto held out his palm and formed the spiraling chakra sphere that had been passed on to him from his dad to his perverted teacher and finally to him. The Rasengan formed in a blue sphere and the two were ready. They're not serious, are they? Gasped Kurenai. I said they'd most likely K each other, didn't I? Chuckled Kakashi. The entire stadium was on the edge of their seats as the two made one last dash for each other, their most powerful jutsus in hand. Naruto, gasped Hinata. Sasuke, gasped Sakura. Naruto and Sasuke thrusted their hands towards each other and the two jutsu met as a massive explosion ensued. Rasengan, Chidori, Jutsu. Sakura's upgraded Cherry Blossom Blizzard. Yes, I know I'm lame for not giving it a name yet, this is an upgraded form of Sakura's Genjutsu, Cherry Blossom Blizzard. Unlike the original, this genjutsu is much more difficult to dispel and for every failed attempt to dispel it or fight it off, the number of cherry blossoms surrounding a target multiplies. Kurenai stated that this genjutsu still has potential to be advanced, and as such it not complete. Rank, B+, currently. Uses, Haruno Sakura. 8 trigrams vacuum palm, a similar, but more pinpointed version to the chitin. To use this, the user precisely pinpoints the vitals of an enemy and releases a high-speed palm thrust. A vacuum shell, compressed using the yukin, is formed to attack the opponent's vitals from a distance with enough force to blow them off their feet and even put a dent in a concrete wall. It should be noted that while the yukin is primarily an earth-based taijutsu style, this attack may have traces of wind in it, although it is not confirmed. Rank, B. Uses, Hyuga Neji, Hyuga Hyashi. Sand Tsunami. Gaara uplifts a massive amount of sand from the earth beneath him. This results in a massive wave of sand that spreads out from him and buries anything in its path. This technique is often used in conjunction with the Desert Funeral. Rank, B. Uses, Gaara. Desert Funeral. After Gaara has buried a target underneath a large amount of sand, he presses downward, causing the sand to compact and crush anything buried beneath it. Rank, B+. Uses, Gaara. Kaiten, Ascension of the Phoenix, a very powerful fire jutsu and technique of the Uchiha clan. The fire takes the form of a phoenix rising up from out of the flames. As it shoots towards its target, it ignites everything in its path. Rank, A. Uses, Uchiha Sasuke. Fuinjutsu, Absorption Seal, an Uzumaki-style seal that is able to absorb a certain type of chakra, depending on the seal. The seal is usually inscribed on some sort of tool, such as a kunai, and when activated, The seal expands in front of the user and seals away any and all of a jutsu that uses the type of chakra that matches the seal. The only downside of this jutsu is that each inscribed seal can only absorb one type of chakra, and if it's absorbed too much in a certain period of time, the seal becomes practically impossible to use, as seen by the red-hot sealing kunai that Naruto had to throw aside. Rank uses Uzumaki Naruto. Kaiten, Dragon's Wrath, a powerful fire jutsu that is an upgraded version of the Kaiten, Dragon Fire Bullet. The fire is inherently hotter and stronger to a point where it can overcome a wind-backed fireball and use it to increase its own power. Rank A. Uses Uchiha Sasuke. Futon, Wind Sea. After channeling wind chakra into a blade, the user S through the air with it, sending out a blade of wind that's even capable of see through other powerful jutsu. Rank B. Uses Sarutobi Asuma, Uzumaki Naruto. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.